Hey, what's up, book team? It's Amelia, and welcome to day one of the weekend of The Fifth Wave. Dun, dun, dun. So for this first day, I will be sharing my thoughts, views, and opinions on the book, The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. And tomorrow I'll be sharing my thoughts, opinions, and views of the Fifth Wave movie, which was directed by Jay Blakeson. I'm even wearing this fancy-dancy space-themed t-shirt right now. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a bunch of like stars and moons and little planets on it. Speaking of space, I think it's so freaking cool that scientists have been able to detect gravitational waves. That just completely blows my mind, and I'm really geeking out about it. We're just in a big giant blanket that is our universe. So cool. But anyway, back to book talk. So here are my 5 buzzwords for the Fifth Wave. Number 1 is War of the Worlds. So at the beginning of the book, there's this quote from Stephen Hawking, which is, "If aliens ever visit us, I think the outcome would be much as when Christopher Columbus first landed in America, which didn't turn out very well for the Native Americans." And I honestly could not think of a more perfect quote to encapsulate this book. It has action, it has world devastation, it has the annihilation of the entire human race. What more could you want? Buzzword number 2 is strong female characters. That's right, characters, plural. So our main female protagonist's name is Cassie, and she is extremely tough, but she is still very human, but her determination and her will to live is just very empowering to read. And then there's another character whose name is Ringer, who I won't go into too much detail about, but she is so freaking badass. I love Ringer so much. You don't mess with Ringer because she will snipe you into oblivion. I just love the fact that we have 2 very powerful women in this book. There's also technically a third one, but I think she has a little bit more growth yet. But she can still hold her own and can definitely put the guys in their places. Buzzword number 3 is multiple perspectives. This completely took me by surprise because I was expecting this book to be entirely in Cassie's perspective, but then all of a sudden it switched, and it actually did kind of confuse me at first because it wasn't very clear that it was a different perspective that I was reading. But once it clicked, then it was very easy and seamless for me to follow along with the different perspectives. I know there are a few people who struggled with the switch, and they were sometimes confused of which perspective they were reading. But for me, after that initial click, I was able to figure it out very quickly, and honestly, I thought it was a very effective way of telling this story. I felt it really added a lot to it. Buzzword number 4 is hilarious inner monologues. So there are a couple perspectives in this book where their inner monologue is just absolutely hilarious. Especially Cassie's. Oh my god. Cassie's inner monologue, it was just so relatable to me. Like the conversations with her stuffed bear and a bunch of just like sarcastic, snarky comments towards other inanimate objects and even herself were just fabulous. Honestly, if I was in her shoes, I would probably have a very similar dialogue. And additionally, there is definitely some hidden humor in this book. It's just very quirky, and I think that's something that makes this book stand out to me. It never took itself too seriously, and it always knew what it was, and it stuck to it. Because honestly, if this book didn't have that humorous side, then I probably would not enjoy it that much. Buzzword number 5 is no love triangle. Yes, that's right, there is no love triangle in this book. There was definitely potential for one, but it did not and hopefully will not ever happen. There is romance in it, but there's no conflicted feelings over other people or anything like that. But if the love triangle does happen, then I will be so upset because I am kind of getting over the whole love triangle thing. Sure, it can be fun at times, but really, there are other things more important in life than choosing which boy you want to get married to and have babies with, especially when your entire species is being wiped out. Overall, I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. There was a moment where I thought I was going to be giving this book 3 stars. I found it to be extremely predictable, and I did have some issues with it. But the reason why I ultimately am giving this book 4 stars out of 5 is because there is something about Rick Yancey's writing that is just, I don't even know, it just pulls you in. It just completely absorbed me, and there were moments where I basically had to put the book down because I had to remind myself that this is not happening currently, and that all my friends and family and loved ones are safe, and that this probably will not ever happen in my lifetime. It just completely took over my mind, and I feel that any author who is able to do that with me deserves a high rating. As such, I really highly recommend this book. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts. If you have not read the book and wish to remain unspoiled, then this is where we say our goodbyes. But please come back after you've read it so then we can discuss it, because it is such a fun book to discuss. Bye, spoiler-free people! So the first thing that I want to get off my chest about this book is how predictable I found it to be. Now, this is not a new thing for me. I have come to realize that when I'm reading a book or watching a movie or a TV show or whatever, I just tend to realize what's going to happen before it happens, and I'm able to predict these things fairly easily. And I do not take a whole lot of pride in this because I love it when something takes me completely off guard. But at the same time, when something does take me off guard, it's a lot more meaningful to me. I feel like I am just very hyper aware when it comes to finding patterns and formulas in books or whatever it is I'm watching. And I don't know how to really explain it. It's just extremely rare for me to find something that catches me off guard. So that being said, I try not to hold it against books if they're predictable. But I still enjoy talking about the moments that I did find to be predictable and why. So here are the twists in the fifth wave that I saw coming. So twist number one was the reveal that Zombie was Ben Parrish. I knew Zombie was Ben because I am a firm believer that if you introduce a character, they should have a point. So when Cassie mentioned her friend Lizbeth and her crush Ben, I knew at least one of them would be popping up again. And when the perspective changed to an anonymous male character, I knew instantly that it was Ben. And honestly, I would not be surprised if Lizbeth made a reappearance. Although I'm not entirely sure if I would be a fan of that. The other twist that I saw coming was the reveal of Evan being one of the others. Once the perspective of the silencer was introduced, I knew that the silencer would play a bigger part in the book. Once again, you do not introduce a character, especially introduce their perspective, by just throwing them away. They need to add a little bit more. And after the silencer perspective was over and I kept reading, I kept waiting for that perspective to come back. And then right when I was worried that it was just going to be a throwaway character, we met Evan. And the moment we met Evan, I was like, there we go, you are the silencer. I will say though, if that silencer chapter had been omitted, then I would never have guessed that Evan was the silencer. Although maybe I would have, because number one rule of surviving the fifth wave is trust no one. But honestly, I would have loved it if that chapter had been moved to right after Cassie finds out that he's one of the others. Because it would literally be, surprise, I'm one of the others. Oh my god, I hate you, run away. And then boom, we get his perspective of things. And I think that would have been a lot more powerful for me. Finally, and I'm only throwing this one in there because I know a couple people were shocked by this, but I did have a small inkling that everyone being gathered up at Camp Haven had to do with the fifth wave. I mean, first of all, Vosh mowed down the entirety of Camp Ashpit, and in that moment alone, I knew they were the aliens. And I kind of already had a suspicion before that moment because they were using cars and a bunch of other stuff that was supposedly broken and useless. But the moment that absolutely without a shadow of a doubt confirmed it for me was when we went through the processing of Camp Haven. When I was reading Ben going through all of that, I could not help but think about concentration camp prisoners during the Holocaust, because how they were processed is very similar to how the Nazis processed their prisoners, which I know is a very morbid thing to bring up, but they just paralleled each other too well for me to not draw that connection. Now, I was a bit confused as to why they were only gathering children only, but as I kept reading and processing, I realized, of course, children are a lot more impressionable than adults and a lot easier to brainwash. Also, the moment where Ringer and Ben piece together that they are the fifth wave was incredibly well crafted, and I loved reading that moment so much. It was just so heavy and powerful and just brilliant. And speaking of Ben and Ringer, I ship Ben and Ringer so freaking hard. They are the ship of my dreams. First of all, I love Ben. I found following Ben's arc from cocky high school jock into this all-time end-of-the-world leader of the war character to be so frickin' awesome. But what's great is his cocky self is still there enough to drive Ringer crazy. And Ringer is just frickin' no bullshit. You don't mess with her. She is just frickin' awesome. And I just love their dynamic together. I could seriously read transcripts of their interactions for days and be perfectly happy. They are just so much fun, and I love the fact that at the end of this book, they are still friends. Nothing romantic has happened in between them. Granted, I hope something romantic does happen later on in the series for them, and I hope that neither of them die. But for now, it makes me very happy that this is a slow burn love romance blossomy thing, potentially. And now we're going to shift over to the other couple in this book, which is Cassie and Evan. I feel very meh about Cassie and Evan. Cassie, I love. I love her inner monologue. She is so fun to read, and for me, she is extremely relatable. Evan, on the other hand, he makes me so uncomfortable, guys. He really does. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he's a silencer, because I knew he wasn't gonna hurt her, because he would have already killed her if he was planning to hurt her. Maybe it's just because they're both very socially awkward when it comes to the opposite sex, but I just didn't really understand their relationship or their connection. It just made me so uncomfortable to read their interactions with each other. And honestly, I'm still determining if it was a good kind of awkward or really bad, this is a no-no square moment. And actually, speaking of no-no square moments, I think the main thing that really turned me off about Evan was when she was crying and he was kissing away her tears or whatever, which yes, is essentially a cute moment. But prior to that, he had just been so very creepy and awkward, and I didn't know how I felt about it. I think mainly what it comes down to is the fact that I just wasn't buying his insta-love feelings for her. Now, all that being said, Evan is not a horrible character. There were moments where his awkwardness did not really creep me out. And by the end of the book, I definitely liked him a lot more. But I don't know, maybe it's just because I can't handle clingy guys in general. I don't know. But I just have very nonchalant feelings towards the Cassie and Evan relationship. Ben and Ringer are definitely my OTP for this series. However, I will say the scene where Cassie has to take shrapnel out of Evan's butt was hilarious. I did kind of die with laughter at that moment. Another character that I kind of had a shocking reaction to was Sam. It wasn't that I completely hated Sam, I just kind of found him slightly annoying. And I completely understand that he's 5 years old, but there were just some moments in the book where I was like, okay, you need to shut up, stop asking questions, and just do what Cassie and Ben tell you to do. I did think that the younger brother, older brother-esque relationship between him and Ben was absolutely adorable though. I especially thought the prayer moment was so freaking cute. However, we have now come to my two top questions regarding this book. Question number one is kind of benign, but it's an important question that I really want an answer to anyway. What the heck were they scanning when they scanned people going into Camp Haven? Like, what did it mean if someone flashed green or if someone flashed red? What did that mean to the aliens? Like, are the red ones actually secretly infected and the end of the series is gonna be Cassie, Sam, Ben, and everyone basically going alien? I was just super confused by that, so if you have an answer or a theory or whatever, please leave me a comment down below, because I would really love to know. And finally, is it just me, or does it just seem like the aliens are kind of lazy? I guess my main question is this really the quickest way to wipe out the human race? Because I feel like it can be a lot faster. And yes, I know they're preserving the earth and stuff like that, but there are still, I feel, faster ways. Like, why didn't they just come up with more than one disease so then people who were immune to one wasn't exactly immune to the other? I feel like their invasion is taking way too freaking long. Overall though, I did really enjoy this book. As I mentioned before, it completely took over my mind. I can't tell you how many times I put down this book and had to remind myself that there's a 1 in a million chance of this ever happening, and that is a work of fiction, and that it is not happening right now, and everything is happy and wonderful. I do really recommend this book, and I definitely think it'll make my top favorite reads of this year, and I'm really looking forward to continuing the series. Hopefully I'll be able to get to the Infinite Sea soon, and then I know the last book, The Final Star, is coming out later this year, which is awesome because that means I don't have to wait that long. There are perks to waiting a long time with starting a series. So anyway, those are all my thoughts, opinions, and views of The Fifth Wave. I hope you found something enjoyable and or interesting. Leave me a comment down below with your own thoughts about the book. And if you have not read this book yet and decided to watch through the spoiler section, then leave me a comment down below if you plan on reading it. And tomorrow I'll be posting a video about my thoughts and views on the movie adaptation, so keep an eye out for that. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to be updated right when my next video is uploaded, then hit that fancy dancy subscribe button. But for now, good night, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow. Bye!